Hello, this is Christian here. In this video, we'll be talking about variables and data types in PHP. Now, there are certain rules that you must follow, and of course, in every language for naming variables, and PHP has its own rules as well. So we'll be going over that. And there are also rules for naming and declaring constants. This is also very different in PHP compared to other languages. And also the data types we'll be covering are the main types or the 8 types that are covered in PHP. These are including strings, integer, float or double, the Boolean type, array, object, and null, and one more called resource. Now, 2 more that we're not going to cover in this course. These are called callable, which is called callback functions, and iterables. These are just basically classes that allow you to loop or iterate through an array or other object. So mainly we're just going to cover the 8 above in white here. So let's go and take a look and see how these are used in PHP. Okay, so back here in the IDE, again, I'm using PHP Storm. So I'm going to go into the module 1 and create another file. It will be a PHP file, and I'll call this just variables. All right, so let me close this line here. Or you can keep that as that's okay. So variables, there are certain rules. Okay, so I'm going to put here for variables. Now variables are, of course, it considers it covers both your regular variables and constants, but constants are being treated a little bit differently because the way they're declared, they don't have to use a certain character, and that is the $sign. So let's go over that. Now, so the first rule is when you declare a variable, okay, the name of the variable is called identifier, okay? This is the actual name of the variable. A variable is a very broad term. So name is identifier, and the variables are always case sensitive in PHP. Okay, so these are variable names. Rule number 1, you must have you must start, I'll put it here, must start a variable with the $sign. Okay, this is the rule in PHP. That's rule number 1. You cannot start a variable without a $sign. If you don't do that, you can have a you'll be running into the issue of a constant, and we'll see the constant, how that's declared in a minute. So that's rule number 1. And rule number 2 is that the first character, okay, after the $sign, okay, must be a character, okay. I should say not character, it should be a letter. Letter, that's an or an underscore. Okay, this includes like the underscore, A to Z lowercase, or A to Z in uppercase. And that's it. You cannot use any other characters or numbers to start after that first $sign. Rule number 3, you and the variable name can include only, okay, put here, so again 0 through 9 digits, A through Z lowercase, or A through Z uppercase, or the underscore. Only those characters or numbers are allowed inside in the PHP variable name. Okay, and rule number 4 here is, it's important, cannot include white space, or no spaces allowed. Okay, so here is an example of that. You must start with a $sign, and it can be an underscore, just underscore. That's completely legal. Okay, it can be in a lowercase, can be in uppercase. Okay, mainly just those 3. You cannot start with like a number like that. Okay, it would not work. But number 3 says you can include numbers, so that means I can go and do something like this, like you know, underscore and then 1 2 3. Okay, so that's fine, and I can do you know, an A and then 1 2 3. It doesn't matter, right? As long as you start the first character with an underscore or alphabet, then you are fine. And also you cannot have spaces. So if I put a space in here like that, it will not work. Okay, not allowed. I cannot put another $sign here. Okay, it's a little bit tricky when you put a dollar sign as the first character after the first dollar sign, and I'll cover that a little bit later on. But that's something called a variable and very tricky. So be careful with that. So that's not allowed. These other characters are not allowed at all. Okay, you can do that. You cannot use any of these. So only numbers and alphabets. So that's how you declare variables. Okay, no spaces and so forth. Now I mentioned about the dollar sign. If I do a dollar and I put a dollar sign again, and as you can see, the red line tells me that it's not valid until I put something like in rule number 2, right? So if I put like ABC, then you can see that seems to be okay. Although if you look at my IDE, it tells me this is a different color. It's a blue color. And this is what's called a variable, and it's very tricky. So we'll probably cover this later in the course in detail if you have time. But basically, it's very confusing. So maybe I'll save another video just to cover that. But so be very careful when you do this, because it doesn't throw you an error, and that's completely legal in PHP. So, but avoid using that type of naming for your variables. Okay, so those are just basically variable names. There's no length. I guess there's not really no length maximum or minimum. Well, of course, minimum you have at least one character. Okay, the dollar sign plus one character, and the maximum is at. I don't think there's any maximum. Well, there should be, but I mean, why would you use a really long one, right? So. Okay, so that's identifiers and variable names in PHP, and they are case sensitive. So if I do, that these are all different, right? Well, I mean, these two here, lines 18 and 19, are not the same. Okay, those are different because the letter A is uppercase here, lower A is a lowercase up here. So those are not, those are completely separate variables or identifiers. All right, so let's talk about data types. Now, well, before I go data types, I should talk about constants first. Let's put constants here. Okay, so constants in PHP, let me do this so I can have some spaces. Constants can be declared in two ways. Okay, one way is using the word define. And then it's a function. It takes two parameters. The first parameter is the name of the constant. It has to be in string. So for example, you can say pi, and then the value to assigned to the variable is 3.14, for example. Okay, so this is a constant. This is pi. By convention, constants are usually declared using all uppercase letters. Okay. And you cannot put a dollar sign for constant, which is I mentioned earlier. Okay, you cannot do that. It won't work. If you do that, then when you access it, it's going to be treating just a variable. So you cannot put dollar signs there, and so that's one way to declare pi. When you want to use it, you can do something like, for example, total will be equal to pi times 3, right? You can just reference that variable name in all uppercase here. Again, it is case sensitive by default. So if you use all uppercase, you make sure it's all uppercase. If you use a lowercase like this, it won't work. There is a rule exception to that, and that is the third variable here. You have a third variable here. You can set that to case sensitive. As you can see here, it shows you a minute ago. Let me show you what that thing is. So it says case insensitive. Okay. Is false. So you can say case insensitive. This is if you say this is true. This one here, if it's true, then it's insensitive. By default, is not. It's case sensitive. So if you say true, then now that's fine. Okay, that means it's not sensitive. So by default, it is set to false, which is why you don't have to specify that. But I mean, just make sure that you follow the convention. It's all uppercase, and leave it as default to false, because you want to treat it as case sensitive. So that's one way to declare a variable as a constant. Another is you can use the word const, like in other languages, like C# and or in JavaScript, and you use the character same thing again, let's just say state is equal to CA, right? So that is a constant. Again, you can just echo that out. For example, state, then you will see that is state. Okay, so you can use that like that. Now, again, you cannot put dollar signs. If you do that, then it'll be treated as a regular variable like you do here. So you cannot use between, that and a regular variable. So this is the difference between PHP and most other languages. Like if you use in Java or JavaScript, it doesn't care, right? But PHP does care. It doesn't matter. So make sure you don't put a dollar sign in front. Now, if you happen to, let's just say, forgot to use a variable, a dollar sign with a variable, if you happen to do, like, for example, let's just say, apple is sweet, right? Something like that. You see, there is there's an error already. It tells you that because there is no constant name apple. Okay, so unless you put a dollar sign, then that's okay. All right, so be very careful when you do that, because even though it's all lowercase, again, that's just a convention. It doesn't mean that constant has to be all uppercase. It doesn't have to. I could call it all just ST. It doesn't matter, right? But by convention, again, just make it easier to re-understand. So as soon as I see all caps, I know that that is a constant. Okay, so that is the rules for constant and variables. Now, the next part here is the data types. There are 8 types. I guess actually there are 10, but I'm just going to go over 8 of them. The first one here is very common, is the string type. Okay, so string type will be something like name is equal to PHP. That is a string type. Okay, the maybe I should put over here, right? String. Okay, and we move that here. This is string. The next one is the number or integer type. This is for integer. Integer is a whole number, right? No decimal points. And the next one here is decimal or float. Will be like 1.2. Okay, this is called a double or float. Usually it's called double, but it's also float. If you hear those terms, they mean decimal numbers. And then the other one after that is a Boolean. So you can say like found is equal to true or false. Okay, this is a Boolean type. Even though you say true or false, the actual value that gets printed, values are either just 0 or 1. Okay, 0 for true, 1 for 0 for false, 1 for true. Okay, you're not going to see the word true or false like in other languages. And so what else? The next one is object, right? So let's see, integer, float, Boolean type. You have object will be something like, I don't have an example here. You have to create an object first to do that, which I guess I'll just show you in a little bit here. We'll do the other one first, the array first then. Next is the array. So this could be like an array. An array is a list of data, and arrays are declared using the square brackets. Okay, per brackets here is an array of, let's just say 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is an array type. So again, array type. And then we have the null type. Okay, this is null. Means you have the value null. Okay, again, it's not case sensitive. I can put lowercase, uppercase, it doesn't matter. But usually, null, you put all uppercase because it's like a constant. Okay, this is the null type. Okay, that means it's not 0, it's not empty. It's just like it's null. It's nothing. That's what it means. It's nothing. So it's declared, but it's nothing, versus nothing at all. I don't know how to say this, but so that's null. And then we have the object. So the right object, yeah. So object type, and so we have object have to be declared in a certain way. So I mean, just to make it work, and just say object here is equal to object. Actually, it's hard. Let me demonstrate something really fast for it. In order to use object, you have to have a class. So I'm going to go up here and declare in the class call people. Okay, people class. That is a class, and so when you declare a variable object, it's going to be something like new people. Okay, that is called a class object. So this is object type. Okay, we'll talk about object later in the course, but that is the object. And last but not least is called the resource. Okay, this is used for things like, database connection, or you're reading from a string, from a file of that type. So if I were to say, fopen, open a file name, let's just say the index, okay, index.php, open that for just for reading only. Okay, so that should be a type of resource. Okay, so to see these in action, we can print these out to the console and we'll see if they are true. So to do that, I will just basically use the echo statement and print the function get type, and I put in here the name. Okay, the name here. So I could so that's the name, append that. This is append using the dot notation, a line break, and I'm gonna copy this a few times. So in my tool, I just basically Control D that, and it will duplicate that many times for me. So it's very easy to do this. Okay, so this is a number type, goes in here. Decimal type goes in here. Found is the Boolean type. Array, null, object, and then need one more. So, and then this is the resource type. Okay, so if I save this and let me go and turn these off, again, comment, right? Comment those out so they don't, I guess it doesn't matter, but this one doesn't matter, but it doesn't echo that's data out. Okay, so I'm going to save this and go to my terminal. This IDE has a terminal, like in most IDEs, except for like Notepad maybe. But at the bottom here is a terminal. I click that, and it shows me the terminal. Just make sure I'm in the directory of where my files are. That's inside the module 1 directory. So if I type in dir, you see that I have one single folder called module. Just cd and then mod. Type. If you tab it, it will type it up for you. And then just hit enter and make sure I see all those files. So this file is called variables. So I can just say PHP and the variables.php. If hit enter, and here we go. You see that all the outputs for each of those types. Okay. So the first one is the name. That is what you call a string, right? We said it's a string type. The number is a integer type. Okay. So here decimal. And then the double Boolean for the found. Array is this one here. The null is just null. And then we have an object type because it's an object. And this is a file opening, a resource. So yeah, they had it as a resource. There you go. So these are the 8 types value that's mostly commonly used in PHP. So if you want to know what type it is, because as you can see, PHP is a loosely typed language. That means my variable names can contain any data at any given time. So it's always safe to check for the data type first before we do some kind of operations, right? So this function will become very handy to make sure. So for example, if you want to multiply 2 values together, you want to check if that data type is equal to the same type or not. And we'll be talking about the different operators in the next video. But for now, these are the different types of data types and how you declare variables in PHP.